Before I tell you this story, I need you to know something. What you're about to hear isn't just another tale about love conquering all. This is about the moment when everything I thought I knew about my place in the world got turned completely upside down. It's about discovering that sometimes the people who look down on you the most are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. If you're someone who believes that good people deserve good things, even when the world tells them they're not enough, then you're going to love what happens next. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or made to feel like you don't belong somewhere, this story is for you. And if you believe in karma, real, life-changing, watch it unfold before your eyes, karma, then you absolutely need to hear every single word of what I'm about to share. I'm talking about the kind of justice that doesn't come from courts or contracts, but from life itself finally setting the record straight. The kind where the person who tries to destroy you ends up facing exactly what they tried to put you through. Trust me, by the end of this story, you'll see how the universe has its own way of balancing the scales. So if you love stories about underdogs finding their power and karma serving justice in the most unexpected ways, do me a favor right now. Smash that like button and hit subscribe for more incredible tales that will leave you speechless. Because what happened to me, what I witnessed, and how it all came full circle is something you'll want to share with everyone you know. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, in the marble corridors of Royce Industries, where I learned that sometimes the biggest transformations happen in the places where you feel smallest. My name is Luna Martinez, and 6 months ago, I was nobody special, just a 22-year-old girl working 3 jobs to keep my mother's medical bills from drowning us both. The night shift at the diner, weekend shifts at the grocery store, and my main job, cleaning the executive floors at Royce Industries from midnight to 6 in the morning, when the building was empty, and I could pretend, just for a moment, that I belonged in a world of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. I loved those quiet hours alone in that tower of glass and steel. The silence felt peaceful, not lonely. I'd put in my earbuds and lose myself in the work, imagining what it would be like to walk those halls in a business suit instead of a cleaning uniform, to ride the elevator to the top floor as someone who mattered, not someone who was invisible. That fantasy shattered on a Tuesday night in March when I accidentally knocked over my coffee cup while dusting the conference room on the 42nd floor. The dark liquid spread across what looked like important documents, and my heart stopped. These weren't just any papers, they had the Royce Industries letterhead, numbers that looked like millions, signatures that could probably buy my entire neighborhood. I was on my hands and knees, desperately trying to blot the coffee with paper towels, when I heard footsteps, expensive shoes on marble, the kind of sound that meant trouble for someone like me. I looked up to see a man in a perfectly tailored suit standing in the doorway, and I knew my life was about to fall apart. But Julian Royce didn't yell. He didn't fire me on the spot like I expected. Instead, he knelt down beside me and started helping clean up the mess. His hands were gentle as he moved the documents away from the spreading stain. And when he saw tears rolling down my cheeks, his voice was the kindest thing I'd heard in months. "Hey, it's okay," he said softly. "They're just papers. We can reprint them." When I tried to apologize, stumbling over my words about how sorry I was and how I needed this job, he actually smiled. "What's your name?" That's when she walked in, Victoria Sterling, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and a dress that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. The moment she saw Julian kneeling on the floor next to me, her expression turned cold as winter. "Julian, what are you doing?" Her voice could have cut glass. She looked at me like I was something disgusting she'd found on the bottom of her designer shoe. "Shouldn't security handle this?" The warmth disappeared from Julian's face so quickly it made my chest ache. He stood up, straightened his tie, and suddenly the distance between us felt like an ocean. Of course, I was just making sure everything was handled properly. Victoria's eyes never left mine as she spoke. "I'm sure the cleaning staff knows how to do their job without supervision. The way she said cleaning staff made it clear she thought that was all I'd ever be, all I deserved to be. As they walked away together, I heard her laugh, light and musical and cruel. Really, darling, you can't save every stray that wanders in here. I should have known that moment would change everything. I should have known that kindness from someone like Julian Royce would come with a price I wasn't prepared to pay. What happened next should have been a warning, but when you're drowning, even a hand that might pull you under looks like salvation. Julian started appearing during my shifts, not every night, but enough that my heart would race every time I heard footsteps in those empty halls, hoping it was him. He'd bring me coffee and ask about my mother's treatment, remembering details I'd mentioned weeks before. We'd talk about books, dreams, the kind of future that seemed impossible for someone like me. In those stolen moments between midnight and dawn, with the city lights glittering below us, it felt like we existed in our own world where titles and bank accounts didn't matter. But reality has a way of crashing back in. And reality wore designer heels and carried a ring that cost more than my family's house. The night everything fell apart, I was cleaning the executive conference room when I heard voices approaching. I should have left, should have grabbed my supplies, and disappeared into the service corridors, like I always did when the important people arrived. But Julian's voice stopped me cold, and what I heard next changed everything. "The engagement party is next Friday," Victoria was saying, her tone sharp with irritation. "Mother expects the announcement in the society pages by Saturday morning. Your little midnight wanderings need to stop, Julian. People are starting to talk." "I'm not doing anything inappropriate," Julian replied, but there was something tired in his voice that made my chest ache. "Inappropriate." Victoria's laugh was like breaking glass. "You're sneaking around with the cleaning girl like some kind of lovesick teenager. Do you have any idea how that looks? How it reflects on both our families?" I pressed myself against the wall, my cleaning cart suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. This was how she saw me, not as Luna, not as a person with dreams and feelings, but as the cleaning girl, a thing so far beneath her that my very existence was an insult. "Her name is Luna," Julian said quietly, and my heart nearly stopped. "I don't care what her name is." Victoria's voice turned venomous. "She's a distraction, Julian. A pathetic little nothing who thinks she can play in our world. Fire her." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. When Julian finally spoke, his words shattered something inside me that I didn't even know could break. "You're right. I'll handle it tomorrow." I don't remember getting home that night. I don't remember anything except sitting on my mother's hospital bedside chair, staring at my hands and wondering how I'd been stupid enough to think that someone like Julian Royce could ever see someone like me as anything more than a momentary amusement. The next morning, I almost didn't go to work, but we needed the money, and I still had some pride left. I would clean those floors one last time, with my head held high. What I didn't expect was to overhear the conversation that would change not just my life, but Julian's entire future. I was emptying trash bins near the executive lounge when I heard Victoria's voice, bright and animated, in a way I'd never heard before. She was on the phone, and something about her tone made me freeze. "Darling, of course I'm going through with it," she was saying, her voice dripping with amusement. "Do you have any idea what the Royce fortune is worth? I'd be insane to walk away from that kind of security." My blood turned to ice as I realized what I was hearing. "Julian?" She laughed, and it was the cruelest sound I'd ever heard. "Please, he's sweet, but he's so naive. He actually thinks I love him. Can you imagine? The poor thing proposed with his grandmother's ring. All romantic and traditional. I almost felt sorry for him. I should have walked away, should have minded my own business and accepted that my fairy tale was over. But something kept me rooted to that spot, listening to this woman destroy the man who had shown me more kindness than anyone in my life. "Of course I'll keep seeing you after the wedding," Victoria continued, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "Marriage is just a business arrangement, sweetheart. Love is what we have. Julian will never know, And even if he did, what's he going to do? Divorce me and lose half his inheritance to someone who actually cares about his precious company values? The phone call ended, and I heard her heels clicking away, probably going to plan her perfect engagement party while plotting to betray the man who trusted her with his heart. I spent the rest of my shift in a daze, Victoria's words echoing in my head. Julian was about to marry someone who saw him as nothing more than a bank account, someone who was already cheating on him and planning to continue after they were married, someone who thought he was too stupid to ever figure it out. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. Julian might fire me, might think I was just a jealous cleaning girl making up stories, but I couldn't let him walk into this trap. Not when I'd seen the real him in those quiet midnight conversations, when he'd talked about wanting to find someone who loved him for who he was, not what he had. I waited until I saw him arrive that morning, then took the service elevator to his floor. My hands were shaking as I knocked on his office door, knowing this conversation would either save him or destroy any chance I had of leaving this job with dignity. "Luna?" He looked surprised to see me, then concerned. "Is everything all right?" "Julian," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "there's something you need to know about Victoria. Something that's going to hurt, but you have to hear it." The look on his face told me he already knew this wasn't going to end well for either of us. What happened in Julian's office that morning was everything I expected, and nothing I was prepared for. He listened to every word about Victoria's phone call, his face growing paler with each detail. When I finished, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. "You're asking me to believe that the woman I'm supposed to marry in 2 weeks is using me," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I'm not asking you to believe anything," I replied, my heart breaking for him. "I'm just telling you what I heard." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second when doubt crept into his eyes. Not doubt about Victoria, doubt about me. "Luna, I know you have feelings for me," he said gently, and those words hit me like a physical blow. "But this sounds like jealousy talking." I should have expected it. Of course he would think the cleaning girl was lying to break up his perfect engagement. I left his office knowing I'd lost everything: my job, my dignity, and any hope that someone like Julian Royce could ever truly trust someone like me. The engagement party was that Friday night. I wasn't invited, obviously, but the whole city was talking about it. The society pages were full of photos of Julian and Victoria, the perfect power couple, announcing their upcoming wedding to 400 of their closest, wealthiest friends. I was home with my mother, helping her with her evening medication, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, Julian's voice was barely a whisper. "Luna, I need you to know something. You were right about everything." Turns out, Victoria's lover had decided he wanted more than secret meetings. He'd shown up at the engagement party, demanding she choose between Julian's money and his love. In front of 400 guests, Victoria's perfect facade had crumbled. She'd screamed that Julian was nothing but a walking checkbook, that she'd never loved him, that she deserved better than being tied to someone so naive. The scandal was immediate and brutal. Society loves to build people up, but they love to tear them down even more. Victoria went from queen of the social scene to complete pariah overnight. Her lover abandoned her the moment the cameras started flashing, and her own family disowned her to protect their reputation. But the most beautiful part: Julian had taken the microphone that night and told 400 people exactly what kind of person I was: honest, brave, and worth more than all their money combined. "She tried to protect me," he'd said, "while all of you watched me walk toward a lie." 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it had that night when I first spilled coffee on Julian's documents. I wasn't cleaning floors anymore. I was sitting behind my own desk on the 35th floor of Royce Industries, having proven that the girl who used to scrub their marble could think just as strategically as anyone with an MBA. Julian had offered me a position in his company, but not out of pity or romance. He'd seen the business plan I'd written during those long nights in the hospital waiting room. The one where I'd outlined how companies could better support employees with medical emergencies. It wasn't charity. It was recognition of something I'd always had but never thought anyone would value. We'd grown closer, but slowly, carefully. Both of us had learned that love, built on mutual respect, lasts longer than love built on desperation or fantasy. He wasn't my savior, and I wasn't his charity case. We were equals who happened to find each other in the most unlikely place. But the universe wasn't done delivering justice. One Tuesday morning, my assistant knocked on my office door with a resume in her hand. "Luna, there's someone here for the administrative assistant position. Should I send her in?" I looked up from my computer screen, and my breath caught. Victoria Sterling stood in my doorway, wearing a modest business suit instead of designer dresses, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The woman who had once called me a pathetic distraction was now asking me for a job. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could see the recognition in her eyes, the realization that the cleaning girl she'd tried to destroy was now the executive who held her future in her hands. "Please," she said quietly, and there was no trace of the arrogance I remembered. "I know I don't deserve kindness from you, but I've learned what it means to work for everything you have. I've learned what it feels like to be dismissed and overlooked. I'm not the same person who treated you so terribly." I looked at this woman who had once tried to have me fired for existing, who had called me nothing, who had nearly destroyed the man I loved out of pure greed. The old Luna might have turned her away, but the woman I'd become understood something Victoria was just learning. That grace isn't about what people deserve. It's about who you choose to be when you have the power to decide someone else's fate. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Let's talk." 1 year later, I stood in front of a mirror in a dress that cost more than my mother's entire medical treatment, but this time I'd earned every thread of it myself. The woman looking back at me wasn't the scared cleaning girl who used to hide in service corridors. She was someone who had learned that your worth isn't determined by where you start, but by how you choose to rise. Julian appeared in the doorway behind me, adjusting his tie with nervous fingers. In a few hours, we'd be married in a ceremony that had nothing to do with business mergers or social climbing, and everything to do with two people who had found each other in the most impossible circumstances. "Are you ready?" he asked, and I could hear the wonder in his voice, like he still couldn't believe this was real. "I've been ready since the night you helped me clean up spilled coffee," I said, turning to face the man who had seen me when I was invisible to everyone else. The wedding was beautiful, but what made it perfect was seeing Victoria in the third row, genuinely smiling as she watched us exchange vows. She'd been working for our company for 8 months now, and in that time, she'd discovered something she'd never known she possessed: the satisfaction of earning respect through hard work rather than demanding it through birthright. After the ceremony, she approached us with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply, "for giving me the chance to become someone I could actually be proud of." As I watched her walk away, I realized that karma isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about giving people the opportunity to become who they were always meant to be, once their masks are stripped away. Standing there in my wedding dress, surrounded by people who loved me for exactly who I was, I thought about that terrified girl who had once believed she didn't belong anywhere important. She'd been wrong. She'd belonged exactly where life had placed her, in the path of someone who needed to be saved, even if he didn't know it yet. Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, even when it feels like the wrong place entirely. Sometimes the people who try to make you feel small are just afraid of how big you might become. And sometimes love really does conquer all. Not because it's magic, but because it gives you the courage to become the person you were always meant to be. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that your current situation doesn't define your future potential, then please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button if you believe in second chances and the power of choosing grace over revenge. Subscribe for more stories about ordinary people discovering their extraordinary strength. And remember, you belong wherever your dreams dare to take you.